While I've been a bit behind on the anime grind because of some issues, I stumbled upon an anime that I've never heard about that came out relatively recently. Not many people have even heard of this, let alone seen it, but it's something that's received some pretty middling reviews, so I decided to look into it and see which way the show leaned towards. Before I start, I have to say that upon watching, I discovered that this anime is part of a mixed media project. It takes place in the middle of the timeline between its manga and game counterparts, but it seems to be self-contained, so you don't need to have experienced the other parts to enjoy this one. There's only references to the other parts to give you a sense of connection. Deep Insanity: The Lost Child struck me as interesting upon reading its synopsis. We follow this series through the eyes of new recruit Shigure Daniel Kai, joining a government project whose aim is to find the cure to a sickness dubbed the Randolph Syndrome. While this anime doesn't tell us a whole lot about the Randolph Syndrome, we end up learning more about how this world is handling this disaster through a more unexpected military approach. It is through this that we find out the truth of this world, and the consequences of someone that joined under these false pretenses. The story in this anime hits a really weird spot for me, as it's not particularly special, and we've seen similar kinds of stories handled with better writing. In the early stages of it, I came across a decent amount of things that I felt were bad writing-wise, but it was never something that I'd end up writing off as a bad series because of it. It's honestly kind of amazing how this anime has either been ignored or just receiving middling reception. There's a lot in this that I frankly find well done, especially when it comes to the character dynamics between the protagonist and his squad members. If you watch this, you'll probably end up finding a lot of enjoyment through this same reasoning, and for a good reason. They're what's really drawing you into this, on top of the pretty interesting world building. By the time you've been sucked into the series, you'll start noticing the anime story pick up its pace. It's done in a really nice way, as every episode, to some extent, ties directly into the greater plot, even if it's not outright noticeable at first. The first half of the anime you spend getting to know each squad member on a personal level, and it's this that the writing takes advantage of to make the flow of the story be pretty seamless with its character building. It also helps you warm up to the protagonist really easily. Shigure Daniel Kai first comes off as a bland character, but he ends up being a genuinely well-written one by the end of the series. He's someone that was misled by the government and ends up becoming a soldier all because he wanted to be a hero. Much of this series consists of him trying to adjust and really understand his place in this world, and how the truth of the asylum has shaken his original convictions. He manages to be a fairly charming character the more you see him interact and get to know his teammates, as well as dealing with the frustrations of his dream. On another note, after watching the series, I found that there wasn't really much I could say that negatively impacted my experience. When I was early in the anime, I started developing 1 or 2 negative reservations towards it because I disagreed with the direction some things were going. However, a couple of those ended up being resolved towards the end, which made me have a better outlook on the series. I still have some negative criticisms to parts of the writing, such as how there are some really blatant consistency issues with a handful of interactions involving Shigure Daniel Kai, but there's so little there and the weight of it is so minor that it can only really be seen as nitpicks. If I were to single out something as a weakness for this anime, it is ironically related to the reasons I enjoy it. Most of the characters of the series are well written, but around 2 of the 6 main cast members get the short end of the stick, which makes you feel disappointed, because these particular characters could have been so much more than what we got. These characters don't feel like they develop compared to the rest of the cast, especially considering one of them is built up to be a really outstanding character in the show, but they don't quite live up to that hype. While the show doesn't encourage you a lot to keep watching it in the first half, if you stick around with it, you might just end up enjoying it. I find this to be far from what I've heard from other people in the community, albeit there not being much talk there, but I love the time I spent experiencing this. If any of this has interested you even a little bit, I recommend you go and give it a shot. It's not the most beautiful series because you can very clearly see the budgeting problems it has with a few things, but that's really the only place that it's lacking on the technical side of things. I'd love to learn what your thoughts on the series are after watching it, so please tell me what you think of it.